Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Soul Food Producers. My name is Enrique, and today we're going to be talking about how to mix your R&B beats. If you hear me talking all weird, it's because I have a retainer here in my teeth. It's the worst, but just bear with me. I like to think of mixing as having two separate kinds. For me, one kind of mixing would be what a mix engineer does, which is when they get a finished production, they go in and get really surgical about it, clean up a lot of mistakes, and then get really creative, and they just make it sound radio ready, as people say. They make that production translate onto many different systems and be very digestible and enjoyable for people. But in production and beat making, there is a second kind of mixing, and it's a more creative kind of mixing, at least for me, because it's almost like sound design, but with plugins. Instead of using EQs and compressors all surgically and very technically, you're just really trying to shape the sound in the production and really trying to get as close as possible to what you hear in your head. So today we're going to be talking about this kind of mixing, the one you find in beat making and production. Before we dive in, I just want to let you know that a lot of these sounds are available at soulfoodproducer.com. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, but we have a cool collection of sounds and presets over there, so make sure you check that out. So when I'm thinking of mixing and production, and I know that mix engineers think this way as well, I'm hearing the sound and I'm imagining a 3D picture or like a 3D scene of things just moving in three different dimensions. These sonic dimensions are width, so how far left or how far right your sounds are. The second dimension would be height, so how far up or down you perceive the sounds in the mix. When you have a really bright sound like a hi-hat, for example, it typically sounds like it's coming from the top of the picture, but then your kick or your bass really sound like they're coming from below. Think of when you go to concerts how the sub is coming from below, and then you hear the hi-hats on top of everything. That would be height in a mix. And then the third dimension would be depth. This one I think is the most confusing, but the most interesting as well. And it's how far back in the mix or how in front something is perceived. So when we perceive the vocals, for example, as being very up front, it means that they're very up close. They're like popping out of the mix. Whereas if you have a keyboard that's like very buried in reverb or very filtered, you're typically going to perceive it more as in the background, like behind everything else. And to achieve depth, there are many different tools that you can use, such as EQ, compression, saturation, and even reverb. So I want you to keep these concepts in mind when we're mixing this beat. I made this simple 8-bar beat. It's just some drums, a bass, some keys, and a guitar loop. And there's no mixing going on. These are just the sounds coming out of the presets or the original drum samples. So it sounds cool and everything, but it really feels like things should be more in their place. For example, the kick and the snare, I want them to really pop out of that mix. The keyboards, I feel like they can be more buried in the background. The guitar is really cool. I feel like it can be more spacey. It can definitely have some more width, like be more around you in that sense, leaving more space in the middle. And the bass really has to be at the bottom of everything, but very thick, really coming out of those speakers. So as I said, when we're mixing, we're always thinking of these three dimensions: width, height, and depth. So the first thing I'm gonna do, which is like pretty much your most essential tool, is volume and panning. And just with these two tools, you can really start placing sounds where they need to be in this picture. So let's check out just the drums. So when we solo the drums, the kick and the snare are actually pretty present. But when we unsolo the drums, they get kind of lost. And this is because we have other elements going on. We have a bass, we have keyboards, we have a guitar, and all these frequencies are getting masked. So what we want to do is try to fit all these elements around each other. First thing, in the drums, I'm going to lower the hats and just try to place them around with some panning. So this sounds better already. We have three different hi-hats going on, just to give everything a broader sense of width. And we can even lower those hats even more, because what we want from the drums is just to have that kick and snare being super huge in the middle, being like the main elements of the song, really. Let's add the bass and see how we can level those. So the bass is super loud, it's really masking the kick. So I'm gonna bring it down a bit. So notice how there we can still feel the bass, it's nice and deep, but we can really feel the punch of the kick coming through, and that's the main thing for me. I really don't want to lose that punch. And then on this bass, I feel like we can push it back in the mix a little more by filtering out that high end. It's like very buzzy, and I feel like it really doesn't need that buzz. It can be just tucked lower in the mix, being nice and deep, not coming out as much. So I'm just going to put an EQ on that and filter out all that high end. That feels a lot better right there. And we can maybe even bring the bass up a little bit now that we filter out all that high end. Just a little bit. Yeah, it's feeling good right there. Let's bring in the pad right now, because the pad is a very busy element. It has a lot of frequencies, and I think it's the main thing that's masking all the other things. So if we get the volume of the pad right, and then we just filter out some frequencies, I think it's going to sound a lot better together. Yeah, that pad is very big, so we really want to tuck that in the background, make it nice and subtle. That feels a lot cooler. And you see how the drums are still popping, they're still coming out of the speakers. The pad, you can still feel it, but it doesn't have to be that loud, you know? And just with volume, you just kind of find a place for it. We haven't even EQ'd the pad or anything, but it feels a lot better in the mix. Let's bring in the guitar now, and let's find the right level for it. It's very loud, so I'm just gonna bring it down a bunch. So the guitar, I don't really want to send it all the way to the back like we did with the pad. I just want to keep it like nice and in the middle, still having room for the drums to come through and pop a lot. But the guitar is feeling really good right there. It's like right in the middle of everything. It sounds like it's a main element, but it's leaving a lot of room for the kick, for the snare, and even for the bass and the hi-hats. Let's listen to the whole thing with a little piano melody. It's a cool and mystical piano melody, but it's very loud at the moment as well. So I'm just going to bring it down for now, and then we can find some cool effects for it. So if you notice, I'm really bringing down a lot of elements. Those drums are really popping, they're really loud. The guitar is sort of in between, but the keyboards and even the bass, I'm bringing them down quite a lot, just so that they're nice and tucked in the mix. They don't really have to be popping out that much. Everything just kind of needs to glue together well. So we have a pretty good balance going on right now. Let's check this out, and now we can start adding some more color with plugins. So we're still thinking about the 3 dimensions. I'm hearing that the bass is a little deep, it's a little kind of buried in the mix. I like how heavy it is and how it's going with the kick, but I feel like the bass can be a little more distorted just to make it come out a little more in that 3rd dimension of depth. I don't want it to be so tucked in the background, I just want it to pop out the speakers a little more. So one of the best ways to make things pop out of the speakers is with saturation or distortion, and for this, I love Decapitator. So we're going to add some Decapitator to that bass. We're going to listen to it in context, and we're just going to boost it a little bit until it starts coming through the right way. You notice how it starts coming out a little more without like getting too aggressive? It's just a little more present. I'm going to play with the different modes of Decapitator just to see what kind of distortion would work better for this. feeling like this E mode is really giving it a lot of depth, a really good amount of low end, and still making it come out of the speakers in a good way. I'm just gonna boost that drive a little more to see up to what point we can get to. Yeah, that's sounding really good. Now, since we gave the bass so much distortion, I just need to lower the volume of it a little bit because I'm starting to lose that kick. Yeah, it feels good right there. Now I feel like we can make the kick pop out even a little more, just give it a little bit of girth and distortion. So we're gonna put Decapitator on that kick and just go nice and soft with it. Yeah, that's really cool. So saturation is a really awesome tool to make things come out of the speakers a little more. Now thinking about height in my mix, I feel like the hi-hats are a little too like in the middle area. I really want them to be higher in that mix to really come out of the top of your head kind of thing. So with an EQ, I'm really gonna cut out a lot of low end and a lot of mids just to leave those high frequencies so that the hi-hats can live up there. And I'm playing around with the panning again just to see what fits better now that they're in that high space of the mix. And whenever you're boosting frequencies, just make sure you match the level so it's not getting too out of hand. So that's feeling really good right there. I always love when the hi-hats really have that bright texture, just cutting out a lot of mid-range, a lot of low end, and really giving them that place up high in the mix. Let's check out that guitar and see what we can do about it to give everything else some space around it. First thing, I feel like we can clean it up a bit. It's kind of cloudy in the mid-range, and I feel like we can bring out some upper mids just to make it pop through the mix a little more. So with an EQ, I'm just going to look for the muddy frequencies and the low to low mids. I'm just cutting a little bit, but now that the mix is starting to really gel together, I don't really need to cut a lot. I'm just making things fit just a little bit better every time. And now I'm gonna look for something around the high mids that makes it feel full, but still like piercing and cutting through the mix. I'm gonna boost the guitar a little bit just to make it come out a little more. And I can really cut those subs and lows on the guitar. I don't really need any of that. I can also cut the very high end on the guitar. That's usually just a bunch of white noise on the guitars. And now that the guitar is feeling pretty good, I just wanted to move around the mix a little more. Just want to make it have some more width and some more space to it. So I'm gonna add this chorus by Tal. This one is free and it's super cool. It really makes things super wide and super rich. feels really cool right there. And I'm also gonna add a reverb to that guitar. I'm thinking of like a room reverb just to give it a little bit of ambience and sort of a space around it without being too big of a reverb. I don't really want like a hall or a plate on this. Let's make it nice and subtle. See how that sounds? I love that. You see how making the guitar feel right just makes everything else feel really, really awesome? And since our drums were already popping, our bass was already in its space, once we get to the guitar and give it that vibe, it takes the beat to a whole other level. Now let's just get the level right with the guitar because it's a little bit loud. Let's make it be nice and tucked in there with everything, making the beat nice and punchy. I think my snare could pop out of the mix a little more. I'm just gonna grab this EQ and give it a little bit more presence. Just a little boost, probably around 3K to 5K. Yeah, that feels awesome. Just making that snare come out of the mix a little more. And now let's check out that piano melody. I really want it to feel super spacey and super trippy. Because right now it's pretty bland. So I'm going to give that piano some RC20. I'm going to give it some wobble and stereo, some distortion up here in the high end, and a good amount of space with a bit of a shorter decay probably. Let's see how that sounds. That's feeling better. Let's go even crazier with the wobble and the space. That's pretty cool. Now with an EQ, I really want to place that piano melody up high in the mix, just like we did with the hi-hats. Because right now it's pretty much like in the middle of everything. I want to put it like nice and up high and a little like tucked in the background. So I'm going to remove a lot of lows and mids, put it nice and up high. And then I'm probably going to put some reverb to put it a little more in the background. Yeah, that feels really good. So it's nice and up high in the mix right now. Now let's push it back a little more with some verb. I'm gonna add some Valhalla. I'm gonna choose that 80s mode, which is a little brighter and a little better for this kind of sound in my opinion. Let's go past 50% in the mix just to push it nice into the background. That's beautiful. Let's just bring that decay down a bit. Something around 3. That feels awesome right there. And I'm gonna push that mix even a little more. Yeah, that's so cool. Now I'm just gonna bring the level down of that piano and really push it back in the mix. That's really cool right there. Let's have a listen to the whole thing. That's feeling a lot better right there. And now we just need to work a little on that pad. I'm gonna bring in an EQ just to clean up that pad and give it its proper space in the mix. Notice how around this frequency it starts to really clash against the guitar. So I'm gonna bring that down a good amount. And now let's look for that mid-rangey frequency that makes it really shine through. Something around here is where it has a good amount of air. And now I'm gonna filter out the very high end because I don't really want it to be going all the way up in the mix. Yeah, Yeah, it feels a lot better right there. And now a little extra detail we can do, now that we have everything glued pretty well together, is to just make some things pop out even a little more. For example, those hi-hats, we can throw in some fresh air or something like that to really get that high end coming through. So this is my first hi-hat. And I'm gonna hear it in context and just boost fresh air a little just to make it pop out a little more. Let's go to my other main hi-hat. And let's push that fresh air. That feels awesome right there. And my last hi-hat. Let's hear those hi-hats in context. And now that we're doing that, I'm also going to take my clap and I'm going to put some fresh air on that to make it pop through. Yeah, that's feeling so much better right there. So this is pretty much how I would approach mixing a beat creatively. Remember, there's two types of mixings. There's mixing as a producer or as a beat maker, where you're really like coloring the sound and shaping it to be closer to your intention. But then there's also what a mixing engineer does, where they would take this with the effects that you already added and just take it to a whole other level. So whenever you're mixing your beats, remember to keep in mind the 3D image of width, so how far left or right your sounds are, then height, how far up or down your sounds are, and depth, the third one, and most interesting one in my opinion. How far back in the mix something is, or how far up front it is. Basically how much is popping out of the speakers, or how tucked it is in the background. I hope you got some really good insight from this. Hope you got to see how I use my different tools to achieve this vision in this three-dimensional image of sound. And I hope you really like this beat and the sounds that we use. Remember that you can find some of the sounds that we used in this video at soulfulproducers.com. So make sure you head over there and check them out. The link is going to be in the description. Until next time.